Hey Duck fans, Kurt here. Welcome to yet another FishDuck one-on-one video podcast. Well, if there was ever an Oregon Ducks player that really needed no introduction, it might well be this guy right here. Simply put, he was one of the best wide receivers to ever grace Eugene, a two-time All-Pac-10 selection. Keenan Howry was the ultimate X-factor for 4 years, one of the most versatile weapons in the Duck arsenal we've ever seen, capable of changing games completely both in catching passes and returning kicks. Keenan, thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to us.
Oh, thank you, and thanks for the great intro. I know you said I don't need one, but man, that sounded real good to me.
Certainly, man. What made you decide to be a Duck, and what schools had offered you scholarships?
Definitely Oregon, Oregon State, Washington State, Kansas, Colorado, Arizona State late, Nevada, Reno, and I think that was about it when it came down to it. And it finally came down to my final three was Oregon, Oregon State, and Washington State. And what it came down to was it was real close, honestly. It was close to the very end. And with Oregon State, they fell out because at the time, at the end of the season, Coach Mike Riley ended up getting a San Diego Charger head job.
Right.
So that kind of took them out of the running because, you know, their whole staff was in flux because at the time it was, you know, pretty much the beginning of January. I was supposed to be going on my recruiting trip up there. That fell through, so it was in flux. So I decided, you know what, it's down to two schools, Oregon, Washington State. And honestly, it was really close. I mean, Washington State at the time ran a spread, wide open offense, one of the few schools in college at the time that did that. And it was really similar to what I did in high school. So it would have been a seamless transition. But when I went on my recruiting trip, had a great time and everything. But the one thing that kind of took me back at Washington State was when they said, oh, you know what, we'd love to get you up here, probably redshirt you your first year, get some weight on you so you can, you know, be able to sustain a full season. And it kind of hurt that, and I was just kind of taken back because I was like, man, at least I want to be told I'd have a chance to compete. It came down to Oregon, and, you know, Coach Osborne was one who recruited my area for Orange County. And, you know, he started the ball rolling, and then I got to get to know him and Coach Chris Peterson, who's now the coach at Boise. They talked to me, and I really got a good feel for the fit that I was going to be in. You know, I would be told that, you know, I'd be coming in and have a great opportunity to compete. You know, they only had one guy coming back with any experience, and that was the guy from my alma mater, Los Alamitos, Tony Hartley. And going into the season, they said, hey, you're pretty much going to be backing him up. And I said, hey, that sounded good for me. I had that opportunity to go in and compete, and, you know, it came down to it, and I made my choice, and I think in the end, I think I made the right choice.
When you first came in the transition from high school to college, how quickly did you acclimate in that you were thrust into the lineup early on? You ended up playing quite extensively as a true freshman.
Yeah, I mean, I played the first game against Michigan State, played a little bit more against UTEP, and then by the third game against Nevada, you know, I was starting. But to go into the system, it was great. I mean, I was able to pick up the system really quickly. You know, it wasn't as simple as it was in high school. But
Well,
getting the terminology down, I think Coach Peterson does a great job at not just explaining what the play is, but why, you know, it is what it is, why we run it this way and how we do it. And so I was able to, you know, kind of come in, and as a freshman, I really did well in, you know, training camp or in the freshman only camp. And then when we got to the full everybody together, I just kept rolling, kept the ball rolling, kept going. And to the point where, you know, right before the first game, it was like, man, I'm going to get a lot of playing time, you know, and it was a good thing. And also, I mean, there were a lot of other things that happened. You know, one guy who was supposed to come back and be the other starter opposite of Tony was Bobby Nero.
Yep.
You know, at the time, he got kicked off the team for academic reasons, so that just moved me one step closer to where I wanted to get. And then in the game against Michigan State, Ray Brust, who was the starting receiver,
right,
Tony, hurt his knee or his ankle. Yep. He was a little banged up, and then I played well enough into UTEP to where I think the Tuesday meeting before the Reno game, we're having our receiver meeting. We break the meeting, and Coach Peterson's like, "Hey, Keenan, I need to talk to you." So I'm like, "Oh man,
what did I do?"
I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be going on." And he's like, "Hey, you know what? We like what you've been doing. We just want to have a little something different. We're gonna start you at X this year." Now, granted, I had been playing Z behind Tony the whole time I got here. So he was like, all right, so you're playing X, learn it, you're starting. So I'm just like, all right, you know, I'll just try to keep it going as much as I can. And, you know, I got in there against Reno, did pretty decent. And, you know, the rest of the season went really well.
Remember any particular moments maybe in practice where some of those seniors seen that, hey, there's this true freshman out here playing, let's bring him into the fold? Any maybe crackbacks or something that you recall where someone really stuck you good?
You know, honestly, it was a play that I made. It wasn't me getting lit up or anything like that, because I mean that just comes with the that's just happened. I mean, I remember one time our first live scrimmage against you know, I think it was going to the Austin Stadium, and you know, we're going there doing punt return drills. So I'm back there returning punts against the first team punt team. So I catch a punt, I make a move, and next thing I know, I just see Peter Sermon just running right at me. He just hits me across the face. And I'm just like, oh, it perfectly goes right through my face mask, hits me right across the nose. And I was just like, oh man, it just woke me up. And
it's real now. It's officially college football.
Football. It's 6'4", 240-pound linebacker. It's nothing I've ever seen before. But then, I mean, like, my kind of coming of age moment was, I think it was about the end of two-a-days, and I ran a post in a slot and dove and made a catch on Michael Fletcher. And I remember he picked me up off the ground, and he was like, yeah, man, that was an amazing catch. You have to keep that up. And that was kind of the moment I was just sitting there like, man, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I can do this consistently and keep it going at a high level.
I talked to a lot of guys who played for the Ducks, and some are fortunate enough to have that one iconic moment that stands out where they're forever remembered eternally. And I'm sure for you, it's that punt return. Everyone comes up to you who remembers you and says, oh man, I was there, remember that play. So rather than rehashing that play, since I'm sure you've had to do it thousands of times over, how often do you get asked about it? Are you sick of being asked about that play? And do you ever have to remind people like, you know what, I made other plays too. I mean, why do we always have to talk about this one punt return?
Yeah, you know what, I never get tired of talking about it, because you know, it's a great piece of Oregon history. You know, a lot of people will sit there and, you know, compare it to the pick with Kenny Wheaton and say, oh, that's the one play that kind of propelled us to be on a national stage. And if it not was for the, you know, return, you know, maybe this game doesn't go as well. Maybe we don't, you know, end up, you know, #2 in the nation. And, you know, there's a lot to go to it. But, you know, kind of like you said, is that, you know, it kind of overshadows everything else. And, you know, I talked to Kenny about it, the same thing, is that what you don't understand about, you know, myself and Kenny is that, you know, with Kenny, he was a great cornerback at Oregon. But the thing is, only people remember him for the pick.
One play.
And it kind of overshadows everything else that he kind of did at Oregon. And you forget, oh, he was a high round draft pick for the Cowboys, and he played
all Pac-10 selection twice.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know, and with myself, it's kind of the same thing, is that everybody always remembers that great punt return against Oregon State and what it did. And you kind of forget that the fact, like, you know, like you said earlier, I was, you know, all Pac-10, you know, 2 years, twice. You know, my junior and senior year, honorable mention as a sophomore. I was All-American as a junior. I had the time, you know, the record for most career receptions, you know, career touchdowns, and, you know, you kind of forget about all that because of this one play. But the thing is, one play is so great that it's kind of a good thing, because if you can make one play to where it overshadows all this other great stuff that you did, then you kind of look at it and say, oh, I guess it was pretty amazing. You know, that one thing that I did, if it overshadowed all this other great stuff that I did, I guess it was pretty special.
Right. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. I talk to Kenny a lot too, and I know he gets sick and tired of people coming up to him and say, hey, Kenny Wheaton, you're going to score. So how many times people come up to you and say, hey, Keenan Howry, told you he's dynamite?
Oh, man, you know, it's a lot of always see a lot of things on the internet, and, you know, when you read posts, and, you know, every time I get mentioned in something, it's, oh, you know, a great punt return against Oregon State in the rain.
Right.
You know, I love it.
You know, all the hype in 2000 was Texas, and 2001 Colorado, they just beaten Nebraska, they just beaten Texas. They were on a roll, and everyone was saying, oh, well, this Colorado run game's unstoppable. They're so big, they're just going to roll right over Oregon.
You know, I think that's the biggest difference between the 2001 team and all other Oregon teams, you know, that kind of were before and after, was that from the teams before, it was this new sense of confidence that, you know, we've never had, to where stepping on the field, we felt like, yeah, we are better than they are. You know, to hell what anybody else says. We know how good we are, and, you know, we're going to go out there and prove it. You know, we kind of, and that's one thing that I always look at that game, and I always talk to a lot of people like, man, you know, our confidence, our swag was just unbelievable. It's just, it was unmatched, because that's just how we felt. And I think, you know, leading up to the, you know, kind of where we got, or where we are now, I think it kind of turned into kind of almost like a false swag that the team had. It was almost, oh, we have to keep up this image. So, you know, we have to, you know, have this, you know, bravado and, you know, all this stuff going on. And it was kind of false. And we didn't really live up to it, you know, up until more recent years, to where, and yeah, you know, our play has now made it to where, yeah, we can have that bravado, we can have that swag. But that year, you know, it wasn't just that game. That was every single year. I mean, every single game we played that year, we felt like there was no way in shape or form that anybody could compete with us. Like, you know, for me, I've had the pride to play against 3 guys who have won the Thorpe Award, and I think I've done pretty well against all 3 of them. You know, and so I took it as a personal journey to go out there, and I'm gonna try to make as many plays as I can, and, you know, to actually beat him on the first touchdown was, you know, just kind of, you know, just felt really good. And it was like, yeah, you know I can do this, and we're going to do this all day. And we did.
With all the guys that left that year, were the 2002 expectations unrealistic? Because people thought it would just keep climbing up.
I mean, honestly, I thought going into the 2000 team, I was like, I think we're going to have, especially offensively, I thought that going into it, like, hey, we're going to have probably a much better offense than we did last year. I mean, yeah, we lost Joey. We lost Maurice Morris. We lost some linemen. But I thought, you know, the guys that we had to replace them were going to be as comparable, you know, to them at the least. You know, I thought Ontario now finally, you know, shouldering the load by himself, he's going to have more than just 1,000 yards. I thought that 5 more athletic, stronger arm was going to have a much better season, because, hey, I mean, at least he's not throwing the 3 completely different receivers. He still has myself, Sammy Parker, and Jason Willis all coming back, you know, and George Reister is, you know, much more athletic, better blocking than Justin Peele was. So I thought offensively, hey, you know what, this is, you know, we're just going to, if we have to, I think we have the ability to where we can outscore people, because defensively is where we lost a lot. You know, we lost, you know, both corners, and, you know, Rashad and Steve Smith. We lost, you know, Wes Mallard at linebacker. You know, we lost a couple D linemen, you know, so we were thin on defense. So my mentality going into it was, hey, you know, we'll just outscore everybody. I think we have the tools to do it. And you know what, that didn't really mesh with the mentality I thought that we were trying to convey. We were trying to be more balanced, more running the ball, and, you know, that's what we did the first half of the season. And, you know, once we got into the game against Arizona State, I think it kind of figured it out.
God, yeah.
we figured that we have to outscore people, and I just don't think that, you know, the way we went about things in the first 6 games was conducive to us being able to outscore people.
What is it like seeing yourself portrayed like 10 stories tall in the middle of Times Square, New York?
It's humbling and very amazing feat at the same time. I mean, to get off the airplane and in New York and, you know, take a cab, you know, all the way into, you know, Times Square. It was just an amazing experience, you know, being able to share that with my dad, who met me out there, you know, Coach Bellotti, who was there, some other boosters. And, you know, you sit there on Times Square and just so busy. Everybody's just walking, talking, and you look up and it's just all these billboards, all of them just, you know, I can't remember who, it was movie, you know, premieres and movie billboards and fashion billboards and this, that, and the other, and you look up and there's this big, tall, you know, picture of yourself, and you just kind of sit there and you have to take it in for a second, because it, you know, amongst all these other high-end labels and other things going on, you as a football player is up there promoting your school, and it was just really humbling, and it's, like I said, amazing at the same time, because it's like, man, this is the Mecca, this is the epicenter for everything.
It really shows the journey that you took, going from a guy who was thought of as being undersized and too slow, not a lot of teams recruited you, to becoming 2-time All Pac-10 selection, billboard in middle of Times Square, and then 7th round draft pick for the Minnesota Vikings. And it's kind of interesting how you in Ontario, you play with each other in college, and you end up on the same NFL team.
Yeah.
So what sort of experience was that like, having a familiar face when suddenly you're going into this new scary situation of, and suddenly it's pro, the caliber of athletes you're alongside, everyone was the star on their team, and now you have a guy that you've fought with for a couple of years alongside you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is that I met Ontario on a recruiting trip to Oregon the same weekend. We both went up to Oregon the same weekend. You know, we kind of meshed and got along. Then when he came back to Oregon a year later from Tennessee, you know, we got along really well. And I was really good friends with his cousin, Paris Warren, who went to Oregon at the time. And so we got along well. So when we went to Minnesota together, you know, it was just like, hey, you know, me and you just hang out. And, you know, we lived in a hotel together for the first 6 months we were there until the season started. And then, you know, we would always get together after games, like, hey, let's go grab something to eat, you know, and do that. So it made the transition from, you know, kind of a sheltered life in college to being really, really, really on your own in the pro NFL. It made it very comfortable and very easy transition.
What has Keenan Howry been doing in the time since we last see you put on a uniform?
Oh, since I last started playing, you know, like you said, I went back to Oregon recently and finished my degree in psychology, and then I got into coaching. I mean, coaching is something that I kind of, once I started playing collegiately, I kind of got an inkling like, hey, you know what, I might want to do coaching once I'm done playing. You know, I had a good experience, you know, because the thing is, once you're the guy, you know, the guy per se, and especially when you have a lot of young guys coming in, and, you know, I had a good experience in teaching guys like Keith Allen, Paris Warren, Demetrius Williams, like, hey, this is how we do things, this is how you do it. I can explain things well, and I've had great coaches, you know, myself, help me along the way in terms of my development. So I just felt like it was going to be a really good natural progression. And, you know, I stuck with it. And I was able to, I coached for a year up in the Bay Area at St. Mary's High School in Berkeley. And then once I finished, you know, my degree, I came back down to, you know, sunny Southern California. And I finished, you know, I started coaching at Los Alamitos. You know, I've been doing that for this will be my second year this season. And I'm also currently working with an ex-Oregon alumnus, Jaya Figueres, where we have a personal training company that we run, and I do a lot of actually athletic training for, you know, younger kids and some kids in high school, and so we do a lot of that, and, you know, it's just been fun. How
would you like Oregon fans to remember Keenan Howry?
As the greatest. I would just like them to remember me as being the guy who was dependable. You know, so many times not even recent, but just in football in general, you get a lot of guys with, you know, with flash. You know, they have that flash now, but, you know, over time it kind of reveals, you know, what type of player they are. And I want people to always remember that, you know what, yeah, I had the flash, I had the great plays, but over the course of a 4-year career, there was nobody more dependable and more consistent than I was. You know, and I think the one thing that I always get into talks with ex guys, especially at the receiver position, you know, with, you know, Pat Johnson and Damon, and, you know, even when I'm, you know, talking to Jaya, I'm just like, hey, you know what, the thing is, and I mean, not to toot my own horn, but outside of myself, you know, and Sammy Parker, there's been really no other guys who have played with other receivers who are in the top 5 in every category, but still are in the top 5 themselves.
Right.
You know, like, you know, I played with, you know, Coney Hartley, you know, Sammy Parker, Marshawn Tucker. You know, Sammy played with myself, Marshawn, you know, and Demetrius Williams. You know, so we were ball, you know, Tony played with myself, Damon Griffin, Pat Johnson, you know, Marshawn. So you look at that body of work, and to be playing with those other great guys who played at a high level and who are rightfully so in their own mind, greats at the position, but we were still able to hold the records and have records and break records. I think that just shows that how great we were, you know, and I just always want people to kind of remember that, because in today's game, with the way that the offense is now and all these records are being broken from, you know, for, you know, single games and single seasons and careers, to just always remember that, you know, these guys, you know, like myself, Sammy, Tony Hartley, Pat Johnson, Damon Griffin, you know, the guys in the past are, you know, the ones that, you know, really put up a lot of good work and really did work over a good career too. So try not to forget them as much.
Keenan Howry, I will never forget you for your exploits at Autzen Stadium. thank you for being a Duck. Thank you for all that you did on the field and now helping out the next generation as a coach. And
thank you.
just for always, go Ducks.
Oh, yeah, go Ducks. Got to represent.